Hi, my name is Bill Temple. I'm the Senior Vice President at Stewart Cooper & Kuhn, and I'm going to present something that I developed over the years that helps to visualize the communication strategies that occur in an interview process, especially when using share stories to help develop a relationship with a potential hiring manager. And I call this triangle theory. And so what I'm going to do is walk you through this concept of how to develop a triangle theory and what it really means, all things considered. Let's start with the overview of what we're going to cover today. And the first thing we're going to look at is what's called the interpersonal geometry of the communication process. And then secondly is how to complete triangle theory, how to build a baseline, establish communications, building the connection and bridging the psychological gap that occurs. To start with, let's talk about interpersonal geometry. In the communication strategy process with dealing with other people, we have an objective X. Objective X is what you want someone else to do. The objective in the course of job interviewing is getting them to offer you the position. The problem, of course, is that your perception of that objective may be somewhat different from their perception of that objective. The net result of this is that you end up with a separation, if you will, of 180 degrees, half a circle. They have it, you want it, and because of that separation and because of the way this is structured in normal communications, it's perceived by the hiring manager as, you want what I have, I don't have to give it to you, therefore it's a win-lose proposition for you, the person looking for the job. The objective we want to move to, of course, is a win-win proposition. So here's what we do. Instead of leaving the X on the line, let's take the X and move it off the line and create a triangle. So I'll ask you the question, if you remember your high school math, how many degrees in a triangle? Well, the answer is 180 degrees, same as half a circle. So now if you look at this triangle concept, the next question is more of a logic question, which is simply this. If A plus B plus C equals 180 degrees, what can you say about any two angles such as A plus B? It's interesting, pretty much everybody I do this with tries to do math in terms of, well, 90 plus or this or that. No, it's very simple. If A plus B plus C equals at 180, then what can you say about A plus B? It's less than 180. And when it's less than 180, then we're going to create this idea that it's not a conflict, it's not a face-to-face, it's not you have, I want. And here's how that works. What happens when we build the X relationship, we're creating what I call an emotional separation. The idea here is that the desired outcome of what is to happen, the X, is perceived to be closer in distance to the other person's outcome. In other words, it's more in their space, which means that subtly you have to be able to give it up. If you can give it up and let it go a little bit and be more, again, the listener than the talker, as we talk about in interview preparation, then the idea is that perceived by the other person as, hey, this person is understanding what I'm after. So that emotional separation has two components. First is the objective. In other words, the object of the outcome should feel more in line with what they're looking for. All you care about is if they're happy enough to make an offer. The negotiation is a whole different ballgame. It's also a time separation because when you think about it, hardly ever, I can think of maybe one occasion in 20 plus years of doing this, where someone sat down and said, here, I want to offer you the job and here's the offer on the table. It's always out there somewhere. It's also, there's this time separation that means that it's going to happen at some point in the future. Because of these two types of separations, this kind of scenario now is perceived by the hiring manager as, you understand my needs. You understand what I'm after. You seem to get it, and therefore it's a win-win proposition for you. And that's what we're driving for in terms of triangle theory, is this idea of the other person feeling more like you're a fit for his organization or her organization because you understand and you're willing to let it go and let them perceive it as being closer to their outcome than to yours. All right, so what does this mean in terms of building and creating a baseline? Triangle theory starts with this concept of 2 points. The baseline of the triangle becomes, number one, you, the product. What is it you bring to the table? And number two, your positioning. How does your product fit within the needs of the hiring manager? Once you've established this, which is all done prior to you ever walking in the door, that leads to the establishment of the baseline. And really from that point on, what you do is not so much an issue because what you do probably got you in the door in the first place. And this is summarized by your 1-minute commercial. This is what I am, why I can say it, behaviors that make me successful. Step two then is establishing the focus. The focus here is not your goals, it's their goals. It's what are they looking to do, what are they trying to accomplish, and therefore what is the objective is their objective, and now it's a question of how they're going to get there, why they're going the direction they're going, when they're going to get there, etc. So it's all about moving the conversation forward to their goals and objectives. This then leads to what I would call the building connections part of the process. You're going from their past, your past to their future, and this is where the share stories come in. When you prepare for an interview, of course, presumably you've done a lot of research on where they expect to be in the next 6 to 12 months. This is not that hard to figure out. If you've researched the company, you understand what business is like, you have a feeling of what their goals are, which is to be better off tomorrow than they are today, of course. And if you know what those objectives are, what steps will take them there, it's not then hard to figure out, well, then what stories would I use to create value along the way for that organization. Now it's just a matter of connecting the dots, and this is where the stories come in. So, gee, you need this particular step. Here's an example of how I've done that. How do you see that working here? Oh, you need this? Well, here's another story. Oh, you need this? Okay, here's another story. The point of it is you don't necessarily end up hitting all the points. You don't need to. But by connecting the dots, so to speak, you're giving the other person a perception that, gee, this guy, again, seems to be walking in my shoes vicariously. He seems to understand my goals and objectives. But remember, it's their perception of reality that counts, not yours. This is never about what you think they should know. It's about knowing what they think and then being prepared to share with them how you understand that. This leads to the next phase in the process, which is bridging the psychological gap. Every decision requires a risk. And so the concept here is how do we reduce the risk as you move toward the objective of their goals? What happens in the interviewing process is that as you connect your stories to their expectations, you're slowly but surely moving the line, if you will, closer and closer to their goals. Now, there's really no way to measure this distance of this line. The real separation, so to speak, is, it's a bit like, well, a woman's pregnant or not pregnant. A light is on or off. Offer is made or it isn't. So it's very much a black-white. So it's either infinite or zero, I guess you could say. But to visualize this, the idea here is that the real separation, as it moves closer and closer to their goals and objectives, the distance between the lines becomes much smaller. Therefore, the perceived separation is less. Therefore, the risk of making a decision to hire is reduced, and therefore they have a reason to buy. You're it. Why would I not hire you? Because you seem, again, to understand it, and there you are. You now are in the best graces of that individual. So that's the point of bridging the gap, is to reduce the risk of the interview process and the decision to hire. Once you're there, however, you've built a foundation, you've built a connection, but it's not done yet. You don't want to waste this because, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, part of the emotional separation is the time. It's not going to happen immediately. So your job is to follow up. Once you've established the relationship, don't lose it. Use your thank you notes and get that message rebranded periodically between the time that you finish with the conversations and the time they actually make a decision. Not to be obnoxious about it, but a once a week kind of follow-up is a normal process during an interview cycle. So what have we covered here? In summary, establishing the baseline, defining the focus and objective, building the connection through share stories, bridging the psychological gap and reducing the risk over time, and then following it up. Okay, any questions? If you do have some, please feel free to let me know at wtemple@cox.net, and thank you for your time.